All right, a new week, new opponent, another opportunity to be at home. So we're excited about all that. We played fairly well on Saturday night, and it was going to be a challenging game given the opponent. Given an opportunity to go to their place, but I thought our guys responded well, hung in there early. The slowness of the beginning offensively, it was a lot of self-induced situations, penalties. I know we misplayed the ball on the kickoff, which set us back, and being able to stay in the fight and ultimately overcome that offensively and have a real good middle part of the game was what we needed. Defensively, really gave up the one touchdown on a short field, but otherwise made it really hard on them all game, and limited their run game. Got Pennington on his heels pretty early. I'm certain they had to throw more than they would have liked to, and we continued to put pressure on. And obviously special teams, we made the big play with Taco that was very pivotal in that game, but then also we had our share of errors on that side as well. So point being, I think we played well, plenty of things to clean up, plenty of areas to continue to improve upon, and excited about the opportunity with Idaho State coming in here this week. We got out of that game a little with a few injuries. I think right now the anticipation is that we will have everybody available, but we'll see how the week goes. We'll get the go ahead with Neil Daly middle of the week, so that's why he was left out the depth chart, but anticipate that there's a good shot that he'll be back. With Idaho State coming in, I think it's a very dangerous team. They're a team that does have 4 losses, but they've been very competitive. And UNLV, New Mexico, and then this past weekend against Montana, those were games that were certainly hanging in the balance as the second half went along. So we got to be a team that is on our job come Saturday, and to do that we got to prepare well. Offensively very explosive. They're just averaging under 40 points a game, throwing it for over 300. They've done that playing 3 quarterbacks. They have a receiving core, I think, that's very versatile, good size, along with good guys with good quickness, a run game that can do some things as well. So offensively, it'll pose a challenge for our defense, and then defensively, I think they've definitely had their moments where they've been able to defend really well. They went through a transition late last year where they flipped the script on their defense, made a change, and I think they've taken some real strides on the defensive side to where they want to be. So I know they gave all those teams that I mentioned fits at points and times in those games, and those are all offenses I think that are very capable. So that being said, excited for the opportunity to be back at home. Anticipate another great environment here in Bobcat Stadium. Look forward to that thing that we don't take for granted, which is a spectacular Saturday here in Bozeman. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
You emphasized after the start to the season that this team should have urgency and not panic, which is kind of what's been reflective of the past few games. I guess just your thoughts on how they took that message in these past few weeks.
Yeah, I think evidence in that game. It was certainly was back and forth, and we hadn't put any points up on the board. They ultimately scored the first touchdown, but there was no, I don't know, there was no sense of panic. Maybe just simple to say it that way. And I think part of that is, and the offense can look out there and see the defense is doing everything they can, and vice versa, and ultimately we'll be able to break through. And that's a sign of a team that believes in one another, and I think that more than anything is what you need to have a team that combats the panic mode, or one side of the ball that it might get in that mode at some point in time. And even individuals out on the field, I think our guys are doing a good job for the most part of just playing their part, not trying to do too much. I think anytime that we have some failures, that's one of the things that is the reason why this guy tried to do more than he was supposed to. And we don't have a lot of that going on. I think it's become less and less as the season's gone along. So I think our belief in ourselves, certainly our belief in this, what we're doing schematically, is continued to grow, and I think we've played real hard at the same time. So I think you have those two things together, you're going to have a chance every Saturday, and I think that's how our guys feel right now.
You had a kind of funny reaction when after Julius's touchdown, kind of gave him a hug afterward. Can you take us into that moment?
Well, the hurdle, he landed the hurdle, that was part of it. The hurdle in running the football is not the best thing going. It's a ball security issue, and rarely do you land the hurdle and finish it, so he was able to find his way into the end zone. And now I just appreciate Julius and continue to hang in there. I know, for our running backs, those two guys, it hasn't been, it may be as easy as years past or whatever. And they're both playing, I think, at a high level. So anytime either one of them gets in the end zone, and pure determination on a couple runs, I know for Julius in that game, that was very impressive. So just, I think it was more a hug of appreciation more than anything else. Just, he's a competitor, and Adam is too, and I think they're both capable of doing tremendous things, and they have been. It just hasn't been maybe as often as they would like, because they want it all too. So that's really all it was.
On Rocky's touchdown, it looked like those other two tight ends had pretty good blocks, but just can you speak to that play call? I think for the first time we've seen that.
Yeah, we've. I think that's been on the call sheet all year. It's the first time it's come up. It's really just taking advantage of our outside zone blocking, and feel like Rocky, getting the ball in his hands would be able to find those 3 yards, which he did in that play, and I think it was Lubens and Ryland, and then Julius leading the way on that one. So good design, good play call. And out of those bigger personnel groupings, I know down there we've continued to have a widespread of different avenues that we can go, I guess. The call sheet has a lot of things on it, and each week, the more we can call to add to that, the more versatile we'll be out of that personnel grouping.
Taco is the special teams player of the week, and Kenny is the defensive player of the week. Just your thoughts on those accolades? Yeah,
I guess great for those guys to get recognized. I think very deserving, and I know that's the first time within the conference we've had guys recognized. It's not the first time we had guys capable. So I think they both had impactful performances. Certainly Taco's return, the 90-yard return was huge, but he did more than just that. And then Kenny was very disruptive all game, and some of that's caught in the stat sheet, but a lot of it's I think Ty Pennington, what he was feeling over and over again was our entire D-line, but Kenny in particular had a game that was very disruptive.
With Jabez, I guess, obviously he has the touchdown this last week, but how have you kind of seen him grow and kind of, I guess, step up in moments like that this season?
Yeah, I think a pretty fearless young player. You look at him and Dane both as redshirt freshmen. I think they are not afraid of the moment. The ball is, continuing to find both of them, and Jabez has been able to make, a couple big plays in back-to-back weeks. And I think, his growth is just it's apparent, just the volume that we're able to give him each and every week, different than maybe it was week one. I think just his confidence level in the offense more than, I guess, his ability. I think he was confident in his own ability for sure, but then you gain more and more confidence within the offense, and that's got to show up during the course of the week. And I think that's allowed him to be on the field more, and then it's allowed those opportunities to be more plentiful as we go along.
And then on the injury front, now you mentioned Neil, but in terms of tight ends, Hunter and Ryland, you expect both those guys to?
Well, I think time will tell. I think we anticipate them both being able to get out there tomorrow, and we'll just have to see. I know they both didn't finish the game, and that's always a concern, but it's nothing long term for sure, and hopefully the short term is them not completing that game and then being a little slow to go this week.
Coach, you mentioned the slow start. What changed for the offense after Taco's punt return that allowed them to get into a rhythm like that?
Well, we had a bunch of penalties. It seemed like if we didn't have a penalty and we're in a long yard situation, that wasn't a series up to that point. And even the series prior, we had to dig ourselves. We were back at the -3, and I thought it was positive that we got a couple first downs there that then allowed Colby to have maybe his most impactful punt of the day to back them up, and that led to the punt that Taco returned. So I think it was just a matter of not getting behind in those situations. I know ultimately, you know, you think about it, Jabez's touchdown, I think that was a 3rd and 12 after we took the 1 sack of the day I think we took. So we got ourselves out of a situation that we created for ourselves even there. That was a snap that Justin didn't handle. He ends up getting sacked. So I don't know. I think it was just a matter of hanging in there. And then all of a sudden you get a score. The score's tied. You come back, you get another score in a big play. And maybe, I don't want to say that calm the waters, because I don't think it was anything. I mean, some of the penalties are, you know, we had a couple holdings in there. That's based on some of the things that Northern Arizona was doing. We had a personal foul in there, a block in the back. So just some things that were self-inflicted to some degree, but also things that Northern Arizona, you know, probably forced on us. And then we eliminated that for that middle stretch of the game. And you know, the score before the half, you know, we make a play and then we get a penalty on top of that, and then Julius finished that drive off with his run. And then I know the drive coming out of half, you know, Justin had a big 3rd down rush there. So a lot of things, I guess. You know, I think we didn't get in our own way as much through that stretch. We made some plays, certainly, and we started establishing a run game, I know, at the same time, and that's always the best medicine for inconsistency, is you can run the ball and you can run the ball with some effectiveness.
How do you balance kind of the, you know, wanting to clean up some of those mistakes and, you know, some of the special teams mistakes as well, and then having pride that you're able to still win by 24 despite those?
Well, I think it's coming in here on Monday and just being real about what the film looks like. You know, you praise the good and you coach up the things that need to be improved, and that's every week. And I think our guys understand that, because that's not all of a sudden something we're trying to do this week. That's the way we've been every week. And honestly, I hope that's the way they see it every day out of practice, that, you know, our practice film is getting picked apart in the same regard. So I think this group is still young and impressionable and coachable all at the same time. So it doesn't mean we're going to reach perfection by any means, but they want to be coached, they want to learn, and that's up to our coaches to be able to do that on a Monday morning with the film, but then as much as anything, our players to be able to take that on the field and say, okay, I want to get better. I think we do have a hungry group still. You know, this is far from a group that's, I think, reached anywhere near what their best can look like, and that's a lot of individuals within this group. So yeah, I think it's not so complicated, because it's how we go about it, things on a daily basis.
In terms of looking at Idaho State's offense, you know, kind of have musical chairs at the quarterback, how do you evaluate that? And I guess Cook coming back this last week.
Yeah, he's really dangerous, and it's apparent that, you know, he's their guy. I mean, that's how they started the season off. He really did some things against UNLV. He gets hurt, and then he comes back, and, you know, I'd say he didn't quite perform the way they would like against Northern Colorado, but then he was really on fire for a good chunk of the game the other night. But then I thought the other two guys both did well, and you know, they kind of used them both. So I think what it tells you a little bit is their offense isn't maybe dependent on who's playing quarterback, because they got a lot of guys to distribute the ball to, and whoever's playing quarterback, they'll figure it out. I think that's credit to Coach Hawkins and the staff as much as anything. And, you know, I think, but at the same time, Cook is the guy that is the top quarterback, and if he's going, they're really going. He's got a really live arm. He's able to extend plays. He's had some stretches where, you know, he makes throws that you shake your head at, quite honestly. And again, those other two guys, they both function the offense really well too. So again, I think it's more, hey, they got a really good offense. Who's ever playing quarterback, we got to be able to, you know, certainly be on our toes to defend. And you say make them one-dimensional. They kind of make themselves one-dimensional, but they can run the ball at times too with Brooks. And he's a really effective running back. So we got to be able to mix it up on them. Hopefully get them behind the chains and, you know, and be able to put some pressure on. But we got to be able to cover on the flip side, because they got big, tall receivers. They got quick receivers. They got a little bit of everything. So it's a big challenge, and it's a different team from anyone I think we've faced to this point, as far as their lean to the passing game, and then how effective they can be.
And then defensively, I know you mentioned some changes there, but is anything that's kind of stood out about that unit?
Yeah, when we played them, it was the first conference game last year, and they were in a 3-3-5 mode, and now I would say they're more of a 4-2-5, 4-3, multiple front, but more along the lines of defense like ours would be. I think they've shown to be really active up front. Interior wise, they really caused some real problems on Saturday night for sure. I think they played extremely hard. That is evidence. So they got them playing that brand of defense as far as how hard they play. They have given up some big plays from time to time. And we don't want to have to depend on big plays, but again, I've said it week in, week out. I mean, if there's big plays to be had, we got to be able to make them. We've been able to do that the last couple weeks, and I think that's certainly helped our production. But our ability just to be as efficient as possible, and that's run and pass, is always going to be the key. So that starts with being able to handle their front, which I do think has caused teams problems.
100 persons. Just what has stood out most? What have you been most impressed by this year with him?
Well, it hasn't just been in a flash. It hasn't been just, hey, Hunter had his best game, goal rush or whatever. He's continued to play at a high level. And I think you need that. We have a smaller senior group, and you generally need those seniors to have their very best years. And, Hunter's clearly having that. And you look at that front four of seniors, they've all played really well, and that's where our defense starts. And they have 4 seniors, and Hunter's a big piece of that, playing at the level they are. I know that's maybe what we expected, but you don't know that guys are going to make a jump, and he's really done that. And I know it's about what he's doing Monday through Friday, and he's a guy that's finishing up a construction engineering degree, so he's running the class here and there too, so he's not on the practice field all the time. So I see it a guy that's this is my last go at it. I'm dialed in. I'm going to give everything I can to become my best, so the team can benefit from it. And that's how I see Hunter right now, and that's exactly what we needed out of him.
And there's just Lance McCutcheon being at practice. Could you say anything about that?
Yeah, Lance unfortunately isn't with the team right now, so back working out a little bit. Had a chance to catch up with him a little bit. I know he's not done yet. Hopefully there's another opportunity out there for him, but back in his hometown, so open doors for him to come back and work out and be around practice as much as he wants.
How important is Julius's competitive edge, and what's his appreciation like for this extra final year he got?
Yeah, his competitive nature is pretty extreme, and that's a real positive force for this team. And sometimes in that position, that playing out on a Saturday isn't always going to be plentiful. There might just be a few opportunities here and there. So his drive and what he wants to make of this experience out here at Montana State, I know was incomplete with how last year went. There might have been an avenue where he's healthy and plays 4 games and then plays in the playoffs, and that might be it. But when he ultimately got injured again and had the opportunity to come back, really appreciate him, in doing that, because I'm certain there was other places he could have taken his talents to. But I think in our place, in this university's football program, he saw, hey, this is the spot that gave me another chance, gave me a renewed love of the game. I know he spoke to that, and all he wants to do is be at his very best, and for the team to do its very best. And like I said, that is a positive force on this team, and as much as we can get him involved, we want to do that. And I think he also understands there's a really good really good back and other backs in that room too. So I think he gets that piece of it, which I really appreciate. So very good player, tremendous teammate, and appreciate all that he's done. And I know his stay here has been longer than we maybe anticipated in the first place, but certainly want for him to be able to see it through.
Coach, Justin's coming off really good back-to-back games. Just your thoughts on his play and the growth within this offense through the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think you see it on a weekly basis. You see it on a day-to-day basis in practice. His continued improvement, his continued just comfortability within what we're doing. And I think it's played out the last couple Saturdays where he's made some simple plays and he's made some big plays, and that's kind of what we need out of that position. It doesn't always have to be the big play, but when there's a big play to be made, put the ball where it needs to be made. We have guys that can go get it, and then simple plays are just being accurate with the football, making good decisions, not taking a sack. And I know the one that he took was more because he didn't handle the snap first and foremost and had trouble kind of regaining his balance, but he's continued to compete, and mid-season, a lot of growth from where we would have seen him mid-fall camp in particular. So you're talking about a month and a half ago where it clearly felt like he was the guy, but what would it look like? And I think we're on the right track. But I think the real positive thing is I think both Justin and our staff feel like, okay, there's a bunch of growth out in front of him, and it's not that he needs to do a crazy amount more, but just continue to get better within all the things we're asking him to do, and continue to lead this offense.
Coach, kind of getting into the meat of the season here, is it the expectation that younger guys or first-time starters kind of have to be relied upon a little bit more and step up?
Yeah, we're 6 games in. I think, so to say you're a first-time player anymore, I think we're beyond that. But I think those guys are starting to feel that way. I look at where we're at defensively, and there's a lot of first-time players, meaning they're not all starters, but guys that we're playing with right now, that you feel, again, a lot differently now than we did back at the end of August. I think we still have that capacity to grow. So the comment with Justin is really the same for a whole number of guys on this team, and I think I don't know what it would look like if we drew it on a whiteboard or something, but I think you'd see this upward trajectory that this team is taking. But then I think our potential is still out there, and that's really exciting. Some teams are who they are, and you just hope they maintain that certain level. I think we've definitely scratched the surface, but we have a ways to go. And I think guys, I think the neat thing is I think guys are understanding what that looks like. I think the last couple weeks in particular, I think we've taken a step forward in our preparation. How we've practiced has taken up a notch, and I think they've recognized, okay, that's definitely had a positive effect on how we play. So excited about that, and I think part of it too is we have plenty of competition within this team still, and everybody wants to be out in that field. When you have competition for spots and playing time, I think that feeds a lot of things. It certainly feeds focus, and this team, if we can keep our focus where it needs to be, I think we've got a chance to keep getting better and better.
Kind of along those lines, Jabez told us that on the play that he scored a touchdown on, that was supposed to be Taco, and Taco kind of said, defense is going to come to me more, so let's switch. What does it kind of say that Taco's willing to put that trust in him that he can make that play?
Well, yeah, I think there's 2 things there. I think that's a guy in Taco that's studying some film, that's seeing how they're maybe playing through the first course of the game. But then also, yeah, the trust that he has in a redshirt freshman, I think is definitely there. I think Taco's he's a smart enough player and a team player enough to know that he doesn't need to make all the plays. We got other guys that can, and I think the same then goes for Justin. He's going to throw to the open guy versus I need to force the ball to Taco or whoever else. So I didn't know he said that, but the ball found the right person, and it was a heck of a throw, and that was under duress too. And then Jabez's ability to finish it was impressive.
Coulter, do you have anything?
Hey, Coach, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Follow up on Jabez. I just talked to him when he was mentioning that had a little bit of a hard time as a freshman, just sort of adjusting, but that he's way happier and really feels like he's fitting in now. So how much can just a mentality shift impact the guy's performance on the field?
Yeah, I think first semester, first season is a challenging time for most are freshmen, whether they're from Montana or wherever. I think it just you go from being the guy. Most of these guys were just that to now you're back to square one. I think there's a lot made of what independence and freedom can bring an 18-year-old or whatever, but there's that's scary at times too. And it's not that we don't coach them up, but you're down there on the scout team, and I think there's appreciation for what that is, but you're not out there on Saturdays. So I think sometimes they don't recognize the contribution they're making at the same time. I know he was a key contributor on that scout team last year, and a lot of the reason our defense played as well as they did is because we had a really good offensive scout team, and then some of those guys are obviously jumping into key roles in year 2 and in year 3 in some cases. So I think it's it's par for the course a little bit. I know we really try to get our older players in those position groups in particular to embrace those guys, and and a lot of times just tell them, hey, I went through the same thing. Just hang in there. Get through the first semester, and before you know it, you're going to be in the mix, and you're going to be be used to what college looks like, what being in Bozeman looks like, etc. So we try to do the best we can, I think, as a staff and as teammates, but understand that being away from home for the first time and not playing a role on Saturdays is challenging.
He's such a apparently talented guy, but is he ahead of the learning curve? I mean, did you expect him to be this impactful as a freshman?
Well, I think where we saw him out of high school, I think this was definitely the hope. In year 2, we could find ways to get him the ball. Maybe not move him all around, but find ways to get him the ball, because he played at a pretty high level in Washington for a very good program. And when the ball was in his hands, whether it was jet sweeps, bubble screens, any kind of screen down the field, I mean, he was hard to handle. And he's a very versatile receiver and very versatile ball carrier at that rate at the high school level. So, when you can possess that skill, like you can find your way to the field a little quicker than some. So there wasn't this crazy amount of development to get that piece done. That being said, knowing the offense and knowing all the intricacies, we've been smart about that. I think we've kind of built on that knowledge going back to spring, in the fall, and now we're in mid-season. I think he's in a different place than he would have been out of spring, but he's still not this guy that we're going to move all over the place. We want to put him in position to be successful, and I credit the offensive staff for doing that. Kick return opportunities aren't plentiful by any means, but I know he's dangerous back there too. So I think we got to continue to find ways to get all our guys the ball, and that's a good thing. And when you say that, because the ball can just find where it's supposed to go, not needing to find a specific target necessarily. And I think the more we can spread the ball around, the better this offense will be.
One thing that really stood out to me on Saturday was how Northern Arizona came out and they were very physical up front, especially on their offensive line. But then you guys' defensive line kind of just wore them out by the time the game was over. Can you speak to that relentless nature that your defensive line plays with, and how hard it is to handle when those guys are coming at you in waves for a full 60 minutes?
Yeah, and we played 80 plays. So that's we have a couple quick scores on both the special teams and offensively. Their plays really piled up. I know, even looking at stats sheet at halftime, they'd already thrown 31 times. That's a lot of times rushing the passer. That's a job that isn't built for just 4 guys. So we played that game with 8 guys. The challenge is to say, how can we get that to 10? How can we get that to 10 and really allow for that relentless nature to be evident each and every play, and that's keeping guys fresh, and that's not only within a game but over the long haul of the season. We're 6 games in, the season starts to take its toll on guys. So the more we can continue to have the second teamers and adding to that group, the better off we're going to be. And we're healthy there right now, but that doesn't guarantee us that we're going to be healthy all the way through. So the more game ready guys are, because that is the driving force for our defense. And you know, those guys coming off the ball and really being disruptive in the run game, doing their job in the run game. But then when we get teams in those obvious passing situations, really being able to make those quarterbacks uncomfortable. We didn't have crazy sack numbers, but our pressures, our hits, those numbers were significant in that game on Saturday. And we made a really, I think, consistent quarterback, a really heady quarterback, really uncomfortable. And, you know, that's what we needed to do, and that's what we'll need to do again this Saturday.
Yeah, I counted 23 of them, where you kind of got to him, either hit him or got him off the spot. So
Yeah.
how much of that is just the product of the depth? Because you were talking early in the year how you needed that second sort of the wave of
Yeah.
offensive line come along. How important is that?
Well, I think it definitely is. I think I spoke to it earlier. I think it's our starting four, those seniors playing at a really high level, and you know, those guys being conditioned to go more than they ever have before. That's where it starts. But yes, it is definitely. You know, it's the confidence gained with the next group of guys, and those rep numbers being able to be up to each and every week. I mean, where we were last week compared to even going back to our second game of the year, we were really heavy to that top group against South Dakota State. And out of that game, I said that has got to change. I get it. We were in that game, and every play seemed like it was the biggest play of the game. But we got to get to a point sooner than later where if we have the second group of guys, where we have a combination of guys out there, that's okay, because that next group is going to be every bit as effective. And then ultimately, when we hit the fourth quarter and we need the top group to be, you know, running hot, they're running hot. So it's a process. It's a credit to the coaching staff. It's a credit to that top group. It's a credit to those younger guys being hungry to want to get out there. And then, you know, again, coming in here on a Monday and all week, being okay, if I'm going to get on the field, I got to do this, and this right. And I think those guys, that second group of guys, doing a better job of that.
On that note, then that matchup seems so pivotal on Saturday, because Idaho State gets the ball out so quickly. So how do you sort of manufacture or get pressure when a quarterback does, you know, have four wide all the time and gets it out so quick?
Yeah, I think you got to be able to mix it up coverage-wise, so everything isn't easy access. I know there's an RPO element that, as a D lineman, that's kind of out of your control. So, you know, being able to limit the run game that they have, you know, they're going to pick and choose their times to run it. You know, and it really, you hope the down and distance can then dictate them having to get the ball down the field in turns, hanging on to it a little bit longer, and that's where your pressure exists. So it's kind of, some of it's out of the defensive line's hands on first and second down. Do your job in the run game, I guess. You know, hopefully the mix of calls can get them, you know, in longer yard situations, and then we got an opportunity to have those scenarios just, you know, be in that pin your ears back and really put heat on. So there's a lot that goes into it, and it's, you know, I think there's plenty of plays even on Saturday where you look and say, we're covering well. So we're covering well, that's contributing to the pressure too. And I think that's where we are a better team defensively at this stage maybe than we've been in mid-season any of my years here. We are able to cover better. And you know, I think our continued ability to mix up coverage is something that we got to be able to do. And especially a team like this that's going to throw it a whole bunch, the more different looks you can give them, and be sound in that regard, you know, the better off you're going to be.
A lot of teams in the Big Sky used to look like Idaho State does now, but they're kind of like the outliers. So what do you think of this about the way that they sort of look different than a lot of the teams in the league now?
Yeah, well, I think Coach Hawkins, you know, he'd been in the league, so it wasn't him brand new to the Big Sky. Said, I'm going to Idaho State. I think this is how we can do it, and credit to him. I mean, they've become a different version of you know, a football team in his short time there that can really light up the scoreboard, that can be competitive, that can cause a lot of problems, and they've been able to really find some really good skill players at the same time. So I think it's that. I think each and every program has its path to success, and you know, it's apparent that, you know, that Cody saw, hey, this is going to be our path to be able to really stress teams with our passing game and you know, find, you know, be an attractive place for skill players to go, I guess. And credit to that, because they're a different outfit than they were when I first got here. I know that, and they've made some of these games really challenging, and it's they really should have probably come away with a couple more wins to this point.
Last one for me, when we talked about the youth on special teams, what sort of progress have you seen some of those young guys make, but also some growing pains still on the special teams unit side to sort of balance the potential as well as mitigate the mistakes?
Well, just looking at I think Colby and Brody first. I think Colby has flashed where he can really be this big time punter and kickoff specialist, and then he's shown times where he's hit some balls, he kicks the ball out of bounds, those types of things. So I think his ability to be just consistent is what we're chasing after. I know Brody is a long snapper. I think has done a good job by and large, but there's improvement that could be made there too. And then all the different second year guys in particular that we have, I think they what they do recognize is this is my opportunity to get on the field and make an impact, and that's a pretty good list there of guys, and so their effort's been awesome. And I know for Coach Monaco, it's all right, how much can we ask him to do? What's going to bring out both the execution and the effort, not just the effort? So I think that's where I think as we go into each week, fine-tuning the plan so we can get both of those things, the execution and the effort, because the execution and the effort shows up on the punt return. Those are all young guys that are springing that deal. For Taco, I mean, because Taco, yes, he ran the 90 yards, but it was set up pretty well for him, and guys really hustling. And so we've had a bunch of plays like that, but then we've had some plays that unfortunately you shake your head at. So we got to eliminate those, because winning the special teams battle, especially as the season goes along, those margins are pretty thin sometimes, and we're not always going to get a 90-yard punt return to tilt the scales in our favor. So I think it's from a plan perspective, it's those guys owning the plan. It's the staff coming up with a plan that, hey, we can really match the execution to the effort that we've been seeing. And in the ability, I think there's a good reason why a lot of those guys are out there. The ability is definitely there, and they're hungry for the opportunity.